Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. And on this episode, we are previewing the Extreme365 Europe 2019 conference, which kicks off on March 24th in Amsterdam. MSDW is a media sponsor at the event, as well as the related user group events for Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, which are going on simultaneously. We've been publishing pre-event coverage for the last several weeks for all of those events. And my guest today will help us get a sense of what to expect at Extreme365, the partner-focused event. My guest is Mark Smith, a.k.a. NZ365 guy or NZ365 guy. Mark is a returning guest to our podcast, and he's probably one of the busiest podcasters in the Microsoft business application space himself. He puts out a ton of interesting episodes focused on the MVP community, Power Platform, and the business of the Dynamics 365 channel. We talk about what's new and exciting as conference season begins in earnest this month, including how ISVs and SIs should be looking at the opportunities of the Power Platform, what AI and automation mean to Microsoft's customers, and what the Dynamics 365 community is doing well these days. All right. Hey, Mark Smith, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah, so today we wanted to talk about the Extreme365 Europe event for 2019 coming up in about 2 weeks here, or maybe a little less at this point.
Long.
So I'll hopefully see you there. I will be on site, but as a part of it, as I was telling you earlier, one thing we're doing at MSDW is doing some preview articles, and in this case, I guess a podcast with people who are going to be involved and who have interesting perspectives on what's going on there. So,
Sounds good.
when your name came up and I realized you would be there, I thought, hey, let's hear from Mark and hear what he'll be doing there. So, maybe at a high level, what will you be doing at Extreme 365 and during that week?
So this is the first time for me. I'm going to an Extreme event. I've done the user group summits before and been involved heavily in user groups for 6 odd years. But yeah, so my plan is I get in there on the Sunday and I've got I'm straight into a session, to executive briefing session. I've got 20 minutes to kind of stir things up, challenge people's thinking, and so I'm going to go with three core themes I'm going for there. So one of them is Dynamics 365 is dead. Long live the Power Platform. And I'm going to unpack what I mean by that. There's a lot of people kind of still missing or not necessarily fully understand that when you're building products now, you don't actually have to use Dynamics 365 at all. You can build directly on the Power Platform with all the functionality of Dynamics 365. But if you like, with a different licensing constructs are provided to you, and also you don't have to have the often functionality that would come from Dynamics that perhaps your line of business application doesn't need. And so then the next kind of theme I'll be talking about really for partners is the idea of training and their need to totally flip the training model on its head. So the idea, in the past when I've run practices and stuff, is that a training course would come up, you would, staff would ask to attend it. It might knock them out for 2, 3 days, 5 days, whatever it might be. But the rate of change that Microsoft is pumping out now is that model no longer will work. You really need to go to a model where I liken it to a gym membership. You need to be working out every day of every week to build your kind of learning muscles. And so it's no longer, because that, as I say, we're drinking from a fire hose, and you can imagine with a gym membership, if you decided, okay, once every 3 months, I'm going to go and I'm going to do a real intensive session, and then I'll be fine for another 3 months. It's just not going to cut it right. It's going to have no long-term benefit or really benefit even in the short term, apart from creating a lot of pain. And the problem with kind of, deep dive sessions that last 2, 3, 4, 5 days is that you're overwhelmed with the knowledge because psychologically you can't retain all what you're learning. So really there's a need now for partners to build into their business a kind of rhythm, at least 20, 30 minutes a day of staff constantly learning the new technology. How does it apply to their business, their customers, that type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's such a great set of themes for especially those executive briefings. I have been to I've been to those types of sessions in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
once for an Extreme U.S. event. I've never been to them in Europe, but I can imagine that those challenging, the kind of executive level
Yeah.
partner, leaders who are going to be at this event will. It'll really cause them, I think, to have some interesting reactions.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be in that particular session, but that should be really interesting to gauge some responses, because I certainly understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But my observation has been when business leaders are sort of heads down running their business, they're not necessarily considering those facts. I'm interested to know whether
Yeah.
some of them are already, or whether this is really new, something new for them
So,
to chew on.
so I, I'm hoping it's new, as in,
Mm-hmm.
so I've been doing a lot of reading lately, and one is around innovation and the speed of change that's coming to us now, with really two core technologies that within 5 years, and we're already well down the path, but within 5 years, if we were to look back to today, we'd say, wow, they absolutely disrupted, they absolutely changed kind of where the industry is and even what our concept of work is. And I think it's really, by 2025, we'll be fully in it. And it's really the two key things are practical AI, and the other one is the role that robotics, and I don't mean like a humanoid type robotic, but where robotic type functionality comes to everything that surrounds us. And so, like, when I consider AI, for example, I can, I'm never worried about us getting to the point of singularity, or the point where, the technology, if you like, becomes self-aware and starts making decisions contrary to human desires, if you like. But what I do see is that we're going to see AI, a lot of AI that just does one thing really, really, really well. In fact, it does it so well, it does it better than humans at one thing. So it's not like the whole gamut of human nature and nuances, etc. It'll just be one specific thing that will be impossible to compete from a human perspective. And so therefore I think that and you combine that with robotic technology, it's going to totally disrupt and change every single profession on the planet. In fact, I've tried to think of a profession that it won't impact, and it's hard to find. You take, for example, let's say what we'd call low skill jobs like garbage collection, cleaning, uh, cooking fast food, any of these type of roles, we're going to see them totally become automated. We're going to see these, I believe robots going down your street, picking up your garbage, and rather than, I often see the garbage works, my street in London. If a bit of rubbish blows away, they don't care, right? They're not going to chase after it. Where you could program the robot to take absolutely, if you like, very hygienic type response to making sure that everything is picked up, everything is clean, everything's put back in an orderly fashion, rather than, emotions get involved in how that person thinks on the day. So that's a low skilled job. We're already seeing in things like, fast food, whether it's ordering, etc. Now the ability for AI to use cognitive services and totally understand what has been requested from a very complex order taking process. And so I think this is what we're going to see. And then the thing is that I'm talking low skill there. Now we pump up to high skill. You take every data set that's been collected around the radiography type process. So, a medical based role, and you feed that into a machine learning algorithm. And it now, let's say you had a radiographer that's, let's say she, across her lifetime, or let's say 5 years into her practice, she's engaged with, let's say, 5,000, views of X-rays. But you've got your, an algorithm running across, 50 million X-rays that have been taken, and the ability to predict and understand exactly the nuance and even what was the pre-treatment and post-treatment of the patient in those scenarios, all that data fed into an algorithm, you can see how it's already in this area, they're proving that it's smarter, if you like, than humans, because it can process data at a higher rate with more accuracy than what a human can. So I think this is what we're going to see is a massive amount of roles, jobs, etc., are going to be displaced with technology, and that means there is a need to start learning, intensive learning now, to keep up with this, if you like, pace of change.
Yeah, it's a great message, and certainly it's asking a lot of traditional Microsoft partners, but I think at the same time, you can't deny that if anyone's going to deliver this message to businesses and any kind of organization, could be not for profit as well, a technology partner with the savvy to communicate that is of incredibly high value going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, another example. I was just reading about. I think it was an op-ed by I forget what kind of scientist or researcher, but it was human nutrition was another one that it's been so hard to predict how people will respond to different kinds of diets, or what will make them able to keep weight off, or just be generally healthy in other measurements. And there's no one size fits all. And this I think he was a cardiologist. He was reaching the conclusion and sort of predicting that there is no singular sort of dietary guideline for everybody, and that all these other factors are going to be fed into machine learning models, and including gut bacteria, including sort of glycemic response, all these, and at some point that's going to be the standard of care, is establishing a baseline for every person based on a huge data set, and giving them sort of recommendations. his own, like, he had done some prototype, he participated in a prototype, and the results were pretty weird for him. I think it involved don't eat veggie burgers, but eat cheesecake, and it came out kind of. But I think down the road, dietitians are going to be in that role too, sort of looking at the models and making the recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's a TED talk on this exact subject, and it's just mind blowing. Like they put a real-time glucose monitor into an individual's gut and fed them both the same diet, and just phenomenal. As in everybody's body runs uniquely. And so, but you plug that data in, and then you have real-time monitoring of every type of food you eat. And then all of a sudden it says, when you eat white bread, this is what it does to you, and it's not good. You're going to, you have the choice, don't you, to change, if you like, your behavior.
It's yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's get a little bit back to some of the practical matters, because I can imagine. Again, I'm a partner. I'm hearing this. I think, great. What am I going to do in 2020 to hit my revenue goals, and to make Microsoft happy with me as their partner? A lot of your work is around getting back to something you said earlier, which is the Power Platform, and maybe that, I guess that, no, you didn't exactly talk about that yet, but the idea of maybe leaving behind the importance of the first-party D365 apps in pursuit of some of this planning.
Exactly.
Yeah, what are you going to be talking about with that?
My thinking around that is this: is that 18 months ago, Microsoft did an app separation. They removed all their first-party apps, everything that's kind of got the word Dynamics 365 in front of it. They extracted it away from the core platform, and they moved the core platform in its entirety onto Azure. And that is kind of, for a lot of people, that's not being crystal clear about what the implication of this means. And in line with that, they have also, introduced Flow over the last couple of years, where, traditionally Windows Workflow Foundation, particularly in CE, was the automation tool of choice. Now we have, Logic apps, and then, bubbling up to Microsoft Flow, introduces an incredible amount of new possibilities. It's very close to parity. And it will reach parity with what was traditionally there before long. But once again, I see a lot of partners going, I'm fine with the flow tools, etc., or the workflow engine, the business process flow, etc. That's in the product already. I'm going to stick with that. Well, the thing is, that's not going to be around in 2 years' time. it's going to be gone, and flow is going to be, how it's going to be done. So once again, if you're not skilling your staff and getting them up to speed on flow, you're kind of moving yourself onto the back foot very quickly. And then when we look at the rest of the things, like there's a lot of confusion in the market between what is Power Apps, if you like. A lot of people think Power Apps are Canvas apps, which are kind of this pixel precise layout, designed for a mobile/tablet experience. But that's only part of the Power App story, because the other part of the Power App story is the experiences that we've had in the past on, what would have been traditionally in Dynamics, which is called model-driven app development. And so the combining of these two together are actually Power Apps. But just the way things have pivoted, Power Apps kind of had its birthplace, if you like, to some degree in the SharePoint or O365 environment. And so you've got a lot of practitioners thinks that Power Apps is purely this, extension of Office 365 or particularly SharePoint, where you've got the rest of the community, particularly those with Dynamics backgrounds, see it very clearly as a tool to create new user experiences on top of, the data forms over data sets that they've had in the past. So that's another key message I'm really wanting to land, is that when you build a new bit of software for a customer, unless there's absolutely a critical need to use something that was in sales, marketing, customer service, field service, there's actually no need to use those anymore. You can build your app with the same user interface, the same automation functionality, the same integration functionality as Microsoft does when it builds its first-party app. So the concept of looking at Dynamics apps as an example of what's absolutely possible on the Power Platform, and then turning around and actually building unique line of business applications directly on the platform without touching any of the Dynamics licensing SKUs or requiring anything from Dynamics at all.
I'm thinking back to, that certainly makes sense. I'm thinking back to 2 years ago, I believe. It was the last time I went to an Extreme365 European event, and my recollection is that people were very excited about some of the SMB capabilities that were sort of being promised at that time, and that included like what's now I think Sales Professional. Business Central was still on the way at that point. So a lot of partners who were there were very, very comfortable in working in the SMB space, much more so than I'm sort of used to in conversations I have with North American partners, or even maybe partners from the UK, which seems to be maybe a bit, I don't know, a bit more sort of comfortable with larger businesses based on larger clients. Anyway, I guess I think what you're saying, actually, my guess anyway, is that will be well received. I think anything that can be proposed to fit the needs of small and mid-sized businesses is I think what a lot of these companies are looking for. A lot of these partners are really looking for, whether it is the first party app. Because I don't know that the sales, just to take that as an example, the sales professional, I'm not sure how well that's fitting those needs in the space now that it's out. I'll be interested to find out. Maybe you have a sense already, versus being able to deliver this message that, hey, if it's not the right one, you have all the same tools now that Microsoft has to build an app.
I mean, you're seeing, the product has been, it's 16 years old now, as in Dynamics 365. So it's been around a long time, and of course, with that comes legacy, on the platform. With it comes a lot of history, as in I'm talking about within Microsoft product teams. And I think with what Microsoft has done is separating this. It does a couple of things straight away. Licensing is almost half the cost if you just build directly on the Power Platform, right? Now, if you're in a position where you've got, you're a cloud and partner with Microsoft, that even can drop further. So you just imagine from that, from a just a licensing construct to start really addressing the SMB space now more than ever. It's possible to address that space without having $100 plus license per user if you're taking a Dynamics type app.
there's so much content to cover. I'm actually I didn't I had forgotten that the so for anyone who's going to be at the event or thinking about it, the executive conference of Extreme365 kind of overlaps with the user group conferences, and I think it's a nice combination so that you get a lot of people sort of attending different types of sessions to meet their needs. But Extreme 365 it starts Sunday, like you were saying, with the executive exchange, and then the regular sessions run all the way through Wednesday. It looks like so quite a bit to catch up on there. I certainly recognize some of the names, vendors who are sponsoring, and also quite a few people who are presenting. You and quite a few other Microsoft MVPs who I know are going to be there. I saw Rick McCutcheon's name, someone who you just interviewed on your podcast.
Yeah, we're on a panel together shortly, as an at that event as well. Yeah, we're doing a panel session. Yeah. Right,
and I mean certainly some other familiar names. Great, yeah, and boy, I mean, I just have to say, as sort of an aside, you have been very busy podcasting in your own right. You sort of run 3 different podcast, I guess you'd call them tracks, or
shows.
Maybe even separate shows. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One focused on sort of business development, right? One focused on power platform. Mm-hmm. And what is the third one that I'm?
The one's just for MVPs. So
MVPs, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's really addressing in the community. There's a lot of people that kind of aspire to become an MVP, but they think that an MVP is some elite type person, and I really want to really show the community that these are people just like you and me. They're from different backgrounds, different languages, different upbringings, different I've never been to university in my life, and so a lot of people think it's so far off or so far out there. And I wanted to introduce, a lot of people to that show that are not necessarily in the public domain much, and just expose to the rest of the world that this is something that's attainable, reachable, and these are all real people just like them. So, that's the focus of that show.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I've had the chance to meet my share of people who are Microsoft MVPs. And I mean, the thing that I always find is so remarkable is the level of sort of passion for the products, and sort of the what's the word for it? The sort of satisfaction that people get out of the work that they, or sort of what they get back from all the effort is sort of all the sort of unexpected or the kind of payoff you can't really count on, but they seem to get from anyway. The community feedback, the just the sort of accomplishment of the work that they're doing, and sort of the outward. When you look outward, as MVPs seem to do, into the world rather than looking inward at themselves, I mean, it just seems to garner great results or great outcomes.
Yeah. It's a great community, as in I just can't, and even wider than MVPs, it's the Dynamics community, or let's say the Power Platform community, is such an inclusive community. It blows me away just how willing people are to share information, their learnings, their knowledge, that type of thing. Where, I've been in other places, and particularly in software, a lot of people are very protective of, their IP as such, or they don't want to share their secret sauce because it might, there's a perception will devalue what they have to offer. But you just don't see that in this community. Everyone's engaging. Everyone's looking out, for somebody else. Everyone's kind of cheering each other on as well. I've been in a lot of presentations lately, and the community is always wanting the best, from even the speakers and stuff. They're not really there to kind of knock them, but really encourage them, learn from them, and champion them, if you like. So it's such a good community.
Yeah, there's definitely it's funny because part of that I think goes to maybe your 3 shows. They each kind of, to me anyway, get toward the same theme, which you were just touching on, the idea of these to some extent, the products and the people working on those products are creating a successful ecosystem.
Yeah.
You can't have any one piece without the other pieces. So it does create sort of there's going to be there's going to have to maintain some sort of a balance with good with some degree of camaraderie, some degree of sharing if it's going to succeed. And I guess that also gets back to how how business owners tend to perceive it. Some MVPs are business owners, you included, I suppose. But some are more like employees who are sort of trying to move things ahead inside of their organizations.
Exactly. No, so true.
Interesting that you so no college or sort of postgraduate for you, huh?
No.
Interesting.
No.
And not the first MVP I've met who's told me that.
Yeah, my career started. I was a groundskeeper for 3 years. So I mowed lawns, looked after cricket pitches and rugby fields.
Huh.
That's how I started. But when the internet, came about, I pivoted. I was working in the medical industry for a period, and the internet came about, and I just loved it. So I got into web design to start with, and then that led me into Novell and Sun Microsystems, which then pivoted into Microsoft, around NT4 days. And really, once I went into the Microsoft side of things, I never looked back. So I've been 20 odd years now in the Microsoft side of things. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, now that you mentioned, I'm thinking to like MVPs that I know, and I have trouble thinking of any where their college sort of pedigree plays into anything I know about them. Or any who have told me that they went to a prestigious university or anything like that. I certainly can think of at least maybe one or two others who didn't do the college route and still are. And it really is it's a sort of an award or an achievement that it's hard to argue with the importance of it or the sort of level of accomplishment. It's a great accomplishment. I mean, for anybody.
It's good.
All right, cool. Well, let's see what else. So, your session at the event, or at least one of them, you're doing a panel that involves Rick. You're doing a session on building your ISV on Power Platform, which I think you've talked about a little bit already here.
That one's more kind of detailed, aimed at ISVs. So how, as an ISV, do you jump on the Power Platform and build applications that can be, sold at scale?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So quite a bit different than the traditional SI type partners view of the platform. And one of the case studies I give there is a product called Rapid Start for Build, and it was by Steve Mordew, and he's had his Rapid Start product for a while, and then along comes an industry sector that, the building industry sector, and they needed an application, for managing construction and for houses to be built, and so from woe to go, from 6 weeks engagement to product release took 6 weeks, building it end to end on the Power Platform. Now that's pretty impressive, right? Turnaround from ideation to product live and market, 6 weeks. And I just hear recently it's up for an award in that building sector for Innovative Product of the Year. So it just shows how quick, you in the past, you'd never be able to say, I'm going to build a bit of software and have it in market within 6 weeks.
And that's an ISV solution that Rapid Start built, and they're now marketing it to the building segment.
Yeah. So so there's the Rapid Start, the original core product, that they've had for a while, and then this was an industry that came along. Some folks came to him from the building sector and said, we need, this building sector or our industry sector needs this type of solution, but highly, if you like, tailored for their industry. And so, went through an ideation process phase of work, and then 6 weeks later, the outcome of it was that product was presented at a major conference in the US a few weeks ago, and is up for awards, etc. And, is generating brand new business. So it's a unique product for a unique industry.
Maybe when you were talking earlier, I just jumped to the conclusion that that's what you meant when you were, but even though I guess you were referring more to SIs, because, every SI, has always been sitting on IP that they've either developed one off or that they've, used as a services package as a starting point. Maybe this is the new the new way they should be looking at what to do with that IP that they've
Yeah.
never totally industrialized.
It's hard for an SI to really pivot, because
It is,
they've got
yeah.
to actually, they've got to, I've only seen it work where you go and set up a whole division within the organization. You have a strategy of what's called IP harvesting off your project or SI work. So taking it in a way that's not, breaching anybody else's IP, etc. But then you have a full R&D team that, produce the MVP. And in parallel to that, they've got to have, understand who their channels are that they're going after. I kind of cover about 9 different areas of the business model that they need to really be, looking at seriously. So who are the key resources going to be on it? What are the key activities? So key activities, for example, will be things like, creating a support infrastructure, creating an R&D type rhythm to the business. Marketing, marketing is probably the most important thing. And then a subset of marketing is digital marketing is absolutely critical nowadays if you're going to have a successful ISV solution. And then other things like, what are the revenue streams? What's your cost model? What's your pricing model? What type of relationship are you going to have with your customers? Are they always going to be through an SI partner, or are you going to go direct to market? Because you risk competing against your SIs if you go, if you're going to do your implementation work yourself. And then things like, where does AppSource, sit in that equation? How do you make sure that you're servicing the right audience? Even if you're going to go global, right? A lot of SIs struggle with multi-currency. How do they transact their SI product, in Australia where, there's different tax laws, et cetera, apply? It's more than just going, oh, listen, we've got a product and we'll take it to market. It's you've really got to see it as a startup business within a business if you're going to be an SI, planning on creating or monetizing your IP.
Yes, it's certainly a challenge. You don't see too many SIs who do it successfully. To your point, you said you can think of one that sort of made that transition.
Well, so if you look at Power Objects, right, for a long time, they have created a set of tools that are probably more than anything, they're great to pick up the SI work, right? So they sell them at what I would classify as a loss leader, if you like. So I think they sell them for $1 per user, license. But what it does is it brings in the customers that are going to need that, but also, they're going to need all the other consulting services, the managed services, all those kind of wraparound things. And so, even the business, my first business I had back in New Zealand, Magnetism, we created 4 or 5 different ISV solutions. They didn't make us millionaires by any stretch of the imagination, but boy, did they bring in a lot of consulting work for us. Our biggest client we landed was Red Cross in New Zealand, which we ended up, building a system for them that distributed $100 million when the Christchurch earthquake happened. And the thing is that we would have never got that customer apart from we had a product out in market that was free at that time to install, and they had installed it in their system, and then they looked us up and ended up, contracting us to carry on and manage their projects for the years to come. So definitely a good tool to attract SI-based work.
Anything else you're looking forward to at the Extreme event? Any other speakers you're looking forward to seeing? Anything like that?
The big thing is the people. I love an opportunity to kind of talk to people and hear their challenges and hear the unique ways that they are solving things. Naturally, there's a ton of, as you say, MVPs going to be there. It's interesting because we're all going to Seattle next week for MVP Summit, and then that finishes on Friday. We're on a flight straight back over here to be in time to get to the event on Sunday. But by far and away, like I'm not a big session attendee type person, but the ability to chat with people and kind of see the challenges that they're dealing with, that's what I love. It's just it's a thing, without a doubt. It's the people that make this industry, the fact that Microsoft continue to innovate And I'm blown away by the changes that we've seen from Microsoft since Satya's been in his role for the last 5 years. It's just every person in the product team these days are so open and wanting to enable. And I've been involved with the product team for 7 or 8 years directly now, and it has never been like that in the past. It used to be very much wait and see, closed doors. No, we're not going to reveal that. Now they're just everybody's out to help. Really make the industry rock stars by using the Microsoft technology. So these events are really exciting.
Nice. And I also I have to just add that I really appreciate the effort that you make and some other MVPs make to bring some of those Microsoft people out into the spotlight a bit, so the rest of us can get to learn about them. I mean, I'm sort of my relationship with Microsoft is a lot mostly like a press relationship, media relationship. So I'm not talking to those people nearly as much as you are or other MVPs and sort of partners are. So it's great to hear in that context who you're meeting, what you're learning from them. So I personally really appreciate you taking the time, making that effort along with other MVPs. It's really valuable.
It's good.
Cool. Well, this has been fun. Your enthusiasm is infectious. I mean, I was already looking forward to the event, but for anyone listening, if you can't hear it from Mark, know that this is an exciting time to be getting an update on where things are at in the business application space. Mark, thank you so much. Anything else you want to add? Anywhere else people should be looking for you?
I will be there. I'll have NZ365 guy on my back, on my jacket.
That's right.
And listen, just absolutely do not be afraid. Come up, chat to me. I want to talk. You got questions, anything like that, I'm always open. Looking forward to meeting you all.
This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. My thanks to Mark Smith for joining me today. If you want to reach Mark, well, you can find him at Extreme365 in Amsterdam, or you can reach him online. His website is nz365guy.com, and he's NZ365guy or NZ365guy on social media as well. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.